Each one of the gods represents the personification of a certain model. When people come together, therefore, in some kind of relationship, then, they both agree to become like that model, and that becomes then a triune relationship. And therefore the highest ones, as you go through the gods, obviously is more significant as you proceed, as Zeus becomes the highest figure, since Zeus and Nous are the same. Right? Intellect. And we ought to do the Phaedrus. We ought to do the Phaedrus. It's so beautiful. We'll do that maybe sometime. Good. I like it. I like it very much. Enjoy it, like it, look at it, reflect on it. It's very interesting if you memorize this. Memorize it. Put in your head several propositions. 13, 148, 23, 24. It's a set of them. Very, because then you can use that language, especially 148, which we did here once. So thank you very much. I really enjoyed the opportunity to share this with you. And pardon? Louder?
I was thinking that the idea of those analogies really does pull it out of the perceptual realm.
The analogies really pull it out of the perceptual realm. Talk about it more?
Well, when you see it as an intelligible model, that means it's not perceptible. You're seeing it as relationships. But you don't see relationships.
Yes. Our training is to put the significance on things.
Yeah.
That's what's real, things. This game is saying, wait a minute, it's the relations. Understand relations. That's the key, not things. Things are things. Things change. A thing is this today and that tomorrow. And it's a mystery what it really is in itself as it goes through all of its changes. But relations are constant. That's the intelligibility. And of course, science explores things, and they end up studying relationships of the parts to the parts to the parts of parts, etc.
When I studied logic at the Jesuit University, they never touched on this at all.
Yeah.
It was just a syllogism to them as a whole.
Yeah.
Ball of wax.
We are a strange people. We have turned away from our greatest spiritual giants. And that's, of course, Europe. Europe has done that primarily. We follow Europe like a dog follows his master. Time to separate ourselves from Europe, from my way of thinking. I mean, not that they haven't contributed greatly, but there's a greatness in the Hellenic model that Europe was never able to absorb. Oh, no, right from the beginning. And the degree that they were able to take this was only during the period and for as long as they thought they could reconcile it with Christianity. Once they saw that they couldn't reconcile it with Christianity, they dropped it, and it dropped out of all the universities. It was once part of our culture up to the 17th century. At one time in Europe, it was thought that if you were Christian, you were rational. If you were rational, you were a Christian, because they had this as their background. And of course that all changed when they discovered that the writings they thought were Christian were forgeries produced by pagans or Hellenics.
Yeah.
So that changed overnight. Yeah. So now we live in a society where we agree there's a separation of church from state. And what that really means is our education then is so secular that it has no meaning. Because you can have a metaphysics that isn't Christian, isn't Jewish, isn't anything other than itself, Hellenic. To become rational is to become Hellenic. That's right. That's really where the world should be going, I think.
The Christian documents were kind of analogies. It's a different kind of logic.
Pardon me? They were...
The Christian
Yeah.
ideas Right now, they're a different kind of logic.
For myself, Christianity is a, as it is represented, I think as we mentioned before, that probably nothing has undermined Christianity more than Sunday schools.
Yeah.
And nothing has undermined philosophy more than universities.
Yeah.
And see, Christianity developed for at least 17 to 1800 years when no one had the Bible. That is to say, none of the literate public were able to keep a Bible. It wasn't until the 14th century you were caught with a translation in English of the Bible, you were put to death immediately. Right? It was only until the 18th, 17th, beginning of the 17th century that the King James was available, which is a poor translation. So therefore, when people try to understand it in terms of the text, they're carrying along a tradition, and they're different. They don't merge. If you drop the tradition and understand it, it's saying something entirely different. Which it has to be, since they're separate and distinct. One developed completely separate and distinct from the other. So it's a very sad case. But I think that there's good reason to suspect that things are changing in theology and theologians.
The Sunday school I went to, they tried to brainwash you into agreeing to certain things without any thought behind it. You're supposed to believe things. You're supposed to believe things without any credulity.
Yeah. Well.
So you didn't learn to think, you just learned to believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you had the right beliefs, then you'd be all right.
Wow. Good.
What is this word, joriki, that's up there?
Which one?
Joriki.
Oh, jiriki. Excuse me. That's a word that Buddhists use for a special kind of concentration. See, there's a difference between what we call concentration and what Buddhists call concentration. Concentration, in the Buddhist language, jiriki, is a state that has to be realized. It's when the mind is unified. When the mind is unified, then a certain power is available to the person whose mind has been unified. And with that new kind of power, it can go in a variety of places, and you can use it in a variety of places. But the essential mark of this power is that it allows the individual to function much more spontaneously without having to reflect about doing things. And most often, their actions and what they do is quite appropriate to the circumstances. Therefore, it has a kind of built-in wisdom to it. It's not prajna, which is a higher kind of wisdom, but it's the kind of wisdom where what you're doing is appropriate to the circumstances. Whether you should be in the circumstances or not is not part of jiriki. That's part of the problem of prajna. So normally what people mean by concentration is being able to keep your mind on one object or thought for a certain period of time. Right, that's not this then. This is when the mind has been unified, and naturally a power emerges. And that's what's significant. Naturally a power emerges which then becomes available for the individual for spiritual or other purposes.
A person to relate to the problem at hand, in other words, give your full
That's right.
energy to whatever.
Full force of your being. That's right. That's what it can do. Yeah. 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 Good.
Okay, so how does prajna differ?
What?
Prajna.
Prajna differs.
Yeah.
Prajna is only prajna emerges with a kensho, with enlightenment.
Okay, gotcha.
And for some people, there are cases, or people hold the position, I should say, where they think jiriki is sufficient.